been getting more than my money's worth racing the 1998 CART cars in Automobilista 2 over the last couple of weeks. They're a ton of fun to throw around the different road circuits, especially the US road circuits. You've got Laguna Seca, you've got Long Beach, of course Cleveland that came out with this set, and Road America is on the horizon to round out 4 authentic North American road circuits that CART raced at in the 1990s. But as fun as it's been to tear it around these and all of the other road circuits that come with Automobilista 2, I know I, and hopefully a few more of you watching, are eagerly awaiting Part 3 of Reiza's North American DLC, where they've promised to release oval racing. When I dream of CART and IndyCar in the 1990s, for as much as I imagine dive bombing into the corkscrew at Laguna Seca or bouncing down the streets of Shoreline Drive, the first thing that pops into my mind is 230 miles an hour side by side at the high banks of Michigan. I've been waiting since 1995 for another sim to come along that accurately replicates high-speed oval racing and open-wheel cars as well as IndyCar Racing 2 did. There have been several that have done a great job with online multiplayer racing, but it's offline with AI running full-distance races with strategy and everything involved with that I've really been longing for. So with very little information from Reiza about what's going to come with Part 3, other than that there's going to be ovals, I thought I'd make a video talking about what I think is needed to make a compelling offline IndyCar oval sim. One of the tracks included with Automobilista 2, and actually the first Automobilista from the very beginning, is Jacarapagua in Rio. Jacarapagua is probably most famous for hosting Formula 1 in the 1980s, and I've done a video in Automobilista 2 already taking a look at that circuit. But it's also fairly well known for hosting CART in the 1990s, most notably around a makeshift oval layout. If there ever was an oval that really was a road course with only left turns, I think this would be that. The track itself is nearly flat, more trapezoid shaped than an actual oval, and features some pretty terrifying corners. There was a massive crash here with Mark Blundell, I think in 1996, with a stuck throttle going straight into one of the walls. And I'll point it out when we race, but very tight corners. Actually ended up putting tire barriers around the corners of an oval, which is pretty unique. So it's somewhat coincidence that this track exists in Automobilista 2 and just happens to be from the 1996 through 2000 CART season, so it fits perfect this CART DLC that Reiza's made, and it's somewhat unintentional that we have an oval in Automobilista 2. So I want to put a big disclaimer at the start of this video and note that Reiza hasn't officially put oval racing in Automobilista 2, and even though we can race on an oval or a makeshift oval, they haven't really coded anything into the sim to make it different from road racing. But I think it serves as an interesting example of where the sim is now with no work, just putting a track in that happens to be a circle. What would oval racing be like? And I want to go through and talk about what's good or maybe needs work with it. What are the top features that I think are needed to make this a compelling offline oval sim? This was actually the first thing I tried out when I first downloaded this DLC, and I've been tinkering with it pretty hard for the last week or so, just to try out different settings with both my car and the AI and try to give it the best representation possible. I'd say overall, I'm pretty impressed with what's already here, even without any special work included, and I don't think it's very far off from being something that'll be a lot of fun to play. So we're set up for 40 laps around the oval, which is just outside the fuel window for these cars, so we should need some pit stops, which we can talk about a bit. And I've loaded up the most up-to-date version of the Real livery skin pack from Chrissy2174 at Race Department. It's been getting updates almost every single day, and at this point we've got 16 of the 25 liveries or so that will be included ultimately, so I don't think it's going to be too long till the rest of those are fleshed out. Highly recommend getting it. It makes the cars look so much better. Before we jump into the race, I did want to take a quick look at the car setup, and obviously, it goes without saying, setting up a car on an oval is a very different thing than setting up a car on a road circuit, and it's important to spend a little bit of time focusing on the settings of the car before you're going to have an impression of what oval racing would be like. Now, something to note is these cars are only available in one aero configuration as they come from Reiza right now, and there are plans, I believe, although I haven't seen it written anywhere, but there's plans to add other aero configurations. CART at least ran 3 different aero configurations in the 98 season. You had the road configuration, which is what we had. You had a short oval configuration, which I believe they ran at this circuit. It had smaller front and rear wings, but still not quite as small as the super speedways, and that was the last one, with tiny little wings on the front and rear of the cars, and let them achieve those mind-blowing top speeds. Now the wings are the things that as the fans we would be able to see, but there were a lot of other components of the cars that changed between a short oval and a street course and a high-speed oval. Very diverse series. The cars themselves were not the same car for every track. So keeping in mind we have the road version of the car, there are some limitations when you go to set it up in the garage, but thankfully we can do asymmetrical setups. And I'll say I'm not the most technical setup guru, but I know some of the things that you would need to change for oval racing and have made the car quite a bit quicker myself here. So jumping into the advanced setup, and what you want to do is uncheck this symmetrical setup box. I won't check it to mess up my setup, but that'll let you configure different settings for the left or the right side of your car. And you can see here on the left side, I've got soft slick tires since they won't be taking as much of a punishing, only taking a left turn. But on the right side, I've got hard slick tires. So that'll let them wear a little more evenly across, and from what I've seen, that seems to be true. I do have a lower tire pressure on the left side as well, so that they'll hopefully heat up a little bit easier, and I've gotten them roughly even, although I found some difficulty in getting the tire temperatures to read. You definitely don't get a split, unfortunately, across the tires right now, and I guess that's a known thing. So you can't check your cambers or anything the old-fashioned way, which is a little disappointing, but maybe with some of the advanced telemetry, you can actually do that. Now I have adjusted the brake bias to move the brakes back so you can get some more of that trail braking, and I've closed up the air ducts which would feed air to the brakes to cool them. You can pretty much put this, I wouldn't put it on 0, although I haven't tried it, but put it on 10% since you force a lot of air through the car traveling at high speed. You have no problem keeping the brakes cool. And downforce has been the thing that I've played around with a lot with the front and rear wing. You can lower the rear wing quite a bit, and I think the wings they ran at this track in real life were smaller than the ones here. So you'd imagine you maybe want to run as little downforce as possible, but I've run into some issues trying to balance with the AI where they're pretty quick through the corners and a little slower on the straights. So I could make it so, if we lowered this rear wing down to 24 degrees, which I think is the lowest, we would fly by them on the straightaways but have no chance of keeping up in the corners. So I've gone back and forth with this, trying some different things from super high downforce to none. I've found 26 in the front, 28 in the rear. Gives okay balance with my current settings. I can turn the car quite well. The AI are still a bit quicker through the corners, and we'll talk about that while we're driving, but can keep up with them a little better and overall turn in some pretty good times. Now it does feature the ability as well to change your weight bias longitudinally, so front and back, and then laterally, left and right. And I've slammed it all the way to the left, which I know is what you do in a stock car. I'd imagine it'd be what you do in an open wheel car on an oval as well. So the weight is all the way to the left side to help us turn a little bit more. Now in the suspension settings, there's a ton of things that you can change here that I haven't dived into yet, but I have played around with the spring rates. I've jacked up the right front spring rate and the right rear and the left rear to try to get the car to rotate a bit more, lower the left front so that it's a little softer and can grip the track a little bit better. And of course, tire cambers are a really important thing around an oval. If you've ever looked at an oval car, especially an IndyCar where you can see the tires, look at it straight on from the front or the back, you'll see that they both lean to the left side. You want the tires leaning so that they're always gripping the track as the car puts a lot of load into it. So both in the front and the rear, the tires will be cambered so that they both lean to the left and grip the track as you go through corners. This is where I found a limitation in the settings that you can put in that I don't think would be real. You can only go up to 1.6 degree camber on the front left, which I think you would run quite a bit more than that, even on a flat oval like this. You can go much more in the negative degree, which we have on the right side, which is the natural way to go. So I think it's something to do with the road setup of this car and that it's actually supposed to be a road car, but we'll try to figure that out. I can't read the tire temperatures anyway, so I don't know how far off the tire is. It still feels way better having them like this than having them straight on like you would on a road circuit. And I've done the same for the rears, although these don't have the same limitations. You can go up to 1.9, I believe, on the left rear, and you can go much further than that on the right. Now lastly here, I have stiffened the car quite a bit, and I think this setup actually originally came from my Cleveland setup. So Cleveland couldn't be more different than this Rio Oval, where Cleveland is extremely bumpy and a track where you want a really soft car to help grip through corners. This track is relatively smooth, although there are some bumps and it's a good detailed road surface. It is a very smooth track compared. So stiffen up the car quite a bit. I could play around with this a lot more, and it generally feels a lot better having it this stiff, whereas at Cleveland you'd have it probably around 5 on the front and rear. So those are the settings I've played around with. There's a lot more that you could do in the garage, and I'm sure some folks out there have made way better setups, but it makes the car drive a lot better around the oval. It helps pull to the left when you're in braking and get around the corners with a little less wheel input, scrubbing the tires, and all the tires wear fairly even. So it's a good starting point, at least, much better than the default road setup. Lastly, it's also important to play around with the pit strategy to set up what the crew's going to do when you come into the pits. And I've set up my own Rio Oval pit strategy. If I edit that real quick, just had them change my tires to keep the same compounds that I have in the garage here on the car. Softs on the left, hard on the right. You can also make sure they only add the right amount of fuel. The strategies and stuff, we'll get into it as we race, but it's a little tricky to figure out what the right strategies are going to be when racing the AI, but that's where you can set all that up so that the crew does the right thing. It's possible to also change from the car, but it's tough to do while you're going 220 miles an hour, so best to set up something here so that you only have to tweak a couple settings if necessary. Alright, so here we are on the formation lap, or the pace lap, and I mistakenly said in the last video that you can't drive before the green flag comes out, but I was proven wrong. There's a setting for that. You can turn on formation laps, and it actually works quite well at this track. I've heard mixed results at some of the others, but it just tells you who you have to stay behind, or if you're in the lead, will tell you what speed you can't go faster than. Now, there's no pace car or safety car, and there's no full course yellow flags yet, which is one of the main things missing that I'll start making a list here, I guess, but no full course yellows, which is a huge part of oval racing, and hopefully that's something that can come to the sim, because obviously that would be useful for all different types of racing. But we'll stack up here. Once you get close to the line at any track, it'll go too wide, and we'll have a flying start. And it's very much like a NASCAR style or a sports car style start right now, where we're going to go all the way to the start finish line before the race actually starts. So that's another one to add to the list, is change where the starting position is. IndyCars would tend to start even before the final corner to get nice and spread out so that we're not a big pack going into turn one. But we'll buckle our belts here and see how well we can get through the first couple of laps around Rio, Jacarapagua. Green flag. Get up the gears, try to maybe block the inside a little bit. It's going to be sketchy coming down here. Oh, second gears, keep it on the inside, right against the curbing. Flies around the outside. I got one of the Newman Haas's behind me, but make it through turn one. We'll flat on the back straightaway here, and it's actually flat out through this left-hander. So scary. Get a little bit of a draft, come down to the final corner. Down to third gear. Down to second for a second there. Might be able to keep it in third once we get going, but cold tires. All right, we'll come complete the first lap. So I got around Blundell there, who's the one that had the big crash back in '96. Try to get wide arcing lines, but still have cold tires. But as you can see, everyone's pretty well behaved. Now I'm running 110% AI difficulty, which is just a little lower than you can go at max with 120. And with 120, I can keep up if I'm driving perfectly, but for the race, that'd be fun if I was passing a few cars. Almost outbrake myself into turn 3 there, or turn 4. I don't know exactly how they're numbered. This is Andretti behind me. Now the AI are quicker through the final turn there, turn 4. The rest of the track, they're just about the same speed I am, and that's going to be one of the hardest things for Reiza to do in setting up AI, is balancing them, as Andretti's got a run on me. Just stick in front of them. He's going to have a little bit of a slipstream there. So come through the fast sweeper. Third gear, try to slide it in a bit. Oh, don't run wide into the wall there. Andretti's totally gone from behind me. He's not even in the order, so maybe something happened to him. I'll have to take a look at the replay there. Got 3-4 wide in front. But yeah, balancing the AI around ovals to make sure that they're not a little too quick or a little too slow in a corner. It's important at any kind of track, but around an oval where things are so fine, if they're just slightly slow in a corner or slightly fast, they don't match what's actually possible to do while you're driving. It's really, really frustrating. It's actually changed how I've been trying to set up the car. I mentioned in the setup screens that I've tried to add some downforce or remove some downforce. Got a car braking for the pit lane there. But trying to remove or add downforce to get my car to match theirs, you're almost changing your car suboptimally to match more of the AI cars. So that's going to be a really challenging thing and definitely something to add to the list of things to improve. Overall, though, as you can see here, I think the racing is actually pretty good as we'll try to make a move here. I think on Franchitti, maybe Tracy. Back out of it there. Never trust Tracy. If it wasn't for turn 4 there around this track, I think they'd be incredibly balanced. And what I'm liking and what I'm seeing is that they're not racing 4 or 5 wide or bumping each other out of the way. Now, I have them on 1% aggression setting, and I haven't had a chance to play with all of the different aggression settings around here. I did do that when I was racing them at Cleveland, and I found racing them at 40, 50, 60% aggression, they would just hit me from behind or just be ultra aggressive with dive bombs. Racing them at 5%, which is what I did in that video, they're much better behaved, and I just lowered it a bit more here. We'll get loose in a turn 4. That was almost a spin. Surprisingly easy to do, or maybe not surprising. Holding station here. Now, one of the big things that's going to come up, and we already saw it a little bit, is the strategy with the AI, which is another thing to add to the list. Very weird strategies right now, and I think I noticed this way back when I was doing some of my endurance sports car races in this, that the AI just followed the strangest strategies. I was doing 50-lap races around this track, and they were pitting every 10 laps with accelerated fuel wear on. We're not running any kind of accelerated fuel wear right now. Let's get blocked there by PJ Jones. We're just running normal fuel wear, and you could almost make this on 1 tank of fuel. It's about 38 laps if you were to run flat out. You could dial back the boost a bit and definitely make 40 laps. I've got 2 cars coming up behind me too, I just noticed. It's Allister Jr. there. He'll be wanting to get up front in the Penske. So in a race where you could probably save some fuel, make it the whole way, let's pretend they could only run flat out. We'll have to see where they pit in this one, but with my 50-lap race and two times fuel, they were pitting every 10 laps or so, which is just way too soon. Some of them are pitting even shorter than that. They got a couple cars coming out of the pits ahead. So the strategy is all over the place right now, and that is probably going to end up being on the top of the list. We'll go through some items at the end of the video and rank them somewhat, but I'm thinking AI strategy is just the biggest glaring issue in racing them. You basically would have to turn off fuel and tire wear to have a decent race where you're not going to easily win, or you kind of have to mimic their strategy, which is what I've done here. I think they're going to pit hopefully just about halfway. We'll have to see. Come up the inside of Jones, squeezes me down. I'm hoping some of them pit right about 20 laps. We can do the same thing. Coming to lap 10 right now. But you never want to have to adjust your strategy. What's fun and what's been awesome in doing some of the long IndyCar races and IndyCar 2 is that strategy. It's the biggest part of oval racing. Can you save a little fuel? Can you go a little longer? Can you be easier on your tires? That really needs to come through with multiple strategies and racing the AI. It makes it so dynamic and fun. It's a lot of the fun in oval racing, and something that's hard to do online. If you have a lot of caution flags from people crashing and things, it's hard to have those strategies. So AI is the perfect place to have in-depth, interesting racing strategies, and so I really want them to get that right. It'd be maybe my number one requested feature for this. Got around Jones there. These guys are all over each other in front. Tracy here. Can slingshot around the outside. Got a nice slipstream in front from Blundell. Around the outside, Vitolo. Hopefully doesn't slide up. Oh. Around the outside, there we go. They're 3-4 wide behind me. That's something that's been nice to see, in addition to them racing each other fairly well and not crashing too much or getting caught up with each other, is they do get around lap traffic very well. I think I noticed this as well, racing road courses, that there's definitely blue flag logic in there, which is important around ovals. And I haven't noticed if the lap cars will stick high or low, which is important, especially on the high-speed ovals. You'd want the lapped cars down low so you can swing around the outside, but something's better than nothing. You'll see that in a lot of sims where everything goes great until you catch slower traffic and the leaders can't get around. That even plagues some of the old Papyrus sims quite a bit. So that'd be a nice thing to get to with the AI behavior. And nice to see somewhat included already. Get a nice slipstream here. I think this is a lap down car already. We're chasing Ribeiro in the Penske. Always forget that he raced for Penske. Dive in. The AI take a very wide line coming into turn 3, and I've tried it. It's just not quite enough grip out there. Gotten up to 8th place so far. Now, AI-wise, I'll say the negative pieces, we're not going to see too much of it. I haven't seen it yet. But when racing them, AI do get stuck side by side on this track a bit, or they'll just needlessly race side by side. You definitely want to go for slingshot passes around here or most ovals. And just going side by side, as I'll try it here, around the outside of Ribeiro. Man. Oh, he washes out there below me. It's going to come right back up behind me as we exit the corner. There we go, nice run down the front straightaway. I got a little less wing, which is going to help me out. But he should be ducked right behind me now, trying to get a slipstream. And so it's a different type of logic than you'd have in road racing, although slipstreaming is obviously big there. But if you're going to go through a corner, even if you could get side by side with another driver, you may not want to. You may want to wait a lap or two and get a nice run in a good spot so that you can clear them. Especially on a high-speed oval, going side by side for just the danger factor alone is something you want to avoid. Dipping in the pits, so lap 15, so we might get away with an easy victory here if everybody pits twice. You could definitely make it to the end from here if you pit, but I think he might pit twice. We're catching one of the Newman Haas cars, the Christian Fittipaldi. So something rule-wise as well, and I guess a lot of these, there's a lot of different little things that are all rule-based, so definitely lower in the list, but qualifying is one. I didn't show it here, but there's no difference in qualifying around a track like this. You're just going to go out in a big session with everybody, and kind of fun actually to try to get a slipstream and get a good lap, but in real life you obviously would run 2 or 3 laps timed qualifying alone around the track, and that would be something nice to see. It's definitely not at the top of my list as features needed, and a lot of the other things I've mentioned so far I'd much rather have than the qualifying, but it's just the icing on the cake if you want to put a little polish on it. And hopefully something that wouldn't be too hard. Reiza had a lot of these rules and things implemented in the first Automobilista, which I know is a totally different engine and sim, but they at least know how to do it or know the rules that are involved with it. So come past the piss, see a lot of cars in there. Everything going all right. Still in 7th. Now you notice up to this point I haven't actually talked about the driving and how it feels, because it to me feels very good. Now I'm definitely driving kind of a half-finished setup, and I'm sure somebody could make the car feel a lot better for the oval than I have it here, but I think the driving is very well done. even around an oval that's not really intended to be raced on yet. And setting up the car the way I did, especially the tire cambers, were one of the big things that made it feel a lot better. The weight distribution of the car as well. You can drive so much deeper in the corners, and you get that drive off that's just really nice. So I feel very optimistic. Driving itself is going to be a slam dunk for Reiza, and it's why I'm talking so much about all the other things, because if they implement the different chassis configurations and we can set up the cars accurately for an oval, I have no doubt that it's going to be a pretty good driving experience. It's all going to come down to the rules and how the AI behave, and can you actually race a 500-mile race around an oval and have it be a lot of fun. So if Fittipaldi slows down there, you see a weird error where some of the crew guys are running into the grass between the front straightaway. Got around Fittipaldi. We're on lap 20, so I'm going to dive into the pits this lap. Got a bunch of cars coming out of the pits ahead. See if we can make a safe pit entrance. That's a turn 3. Fittipaldi's going to be quick coming out of the corner. Right, dive down low. He's going to come with me. Oh, it just smokes me coming in. All right, get it under 100. And you see some of the pit guys in the pit lane there. Kind of an odd thing. It's probably just the fact that this track isn't widely used yet. But we'll come to our pit stall. And overall, the pit stops, we'll go through Fittipaldi. I was going to talk about that too. The AI do phase in and out like you have in iRacing these days. So in the pit lane, and especially coming out of the pit lane, the AI, you can't actually hit them. All right, there we go. Exit. Come out right behind Fittipaldi. So perfect pit stop, crew. All right, we'll try to merge back on. You know, I think it's an okay compromise. If I was to pick things for them to concentrate on and getting the AI to work, then we could either choose that they can come in and out of the pit lane without crashing, or that they'll be a little better at slipstreaming and passing. I would absolutely go for the on-track stuff. We got Zanardi coming up behind me. Block him on the inside. He's gonna dive bomb me. I got cold tires. Oh. Looks like Zanardi's in the lead, so he hasn't pit yet, so the pit strategy and everything might work out all right with the shorter distance, 40 laps, and no accelerated fuel wear and things, but it seems like a pretty easy equation to figure out for fuel and tires and things, just to get them pitting, at least on a logical cadence. Split the race down the middle, or try to go the whole way with a little saving or something. It'd be fun to have a few different strategies. So I've mentioned a lot of rules things, the pace car, with qualifying procedures. One thing hopefully won't happen in this race is in some of my testing, I did get a speeding penalty for following Bobby Rahal now. Did get a speeding penalty in the pits, entering the pits, which is cool to see there's the speeding penalties. The penalty it gave me, however, was 10 seconds added on, or 5 seconds added on to my final race time, which is very different than a penalty you get in oval racing. You definitely get a drive-through penalty or stop and go. Time penalties just really aren't a thing in oval racing. For whatever reason, I think it would make it hard to understand what's actually happening on the track from a spectator perspective. So it'd be nice to have some of those tweaks as well. Not the biggest deal in the world, definitely low on the list. I think a lot of folks probably turn off those types of penalties anyway, but if we're gonna have them, stop and goes, drive-throughs, those would even be nice for online racing so that things can be policed somewhat realistically. Get a run on Rahal here in the nice Miller Lite livery. That's one of the newer ones that's been done. Keep it nice and tidy on the inside. He's going to rock it around the out. 1998 was Bobby Rahal's final season in kart racing, which had a very long career, great career. Try to come up the inside of him here. Side with Rahal down the back straightaway. Got one of the Newman Haas cars closing up behind us too. Oh. slide the car into turn 3. He's going to come up behind me on the way out, block him there. Right, if he doesn't slipstream with me, might have him coming down at turn 1. A couple more cars exiting the pit lane. I'm in 5th position now. We're just going to benefit from poor strategy. Scott Pruitt coming out in front, chasing Greg Moore, my fictional teammate here, racing Patrick Carpentier's car. I'm trying to get a slipstream here off Pruitt. Dennis Vitolo in the pit lane, so we're going to get 4th place as well. The group in front of Pitt, so we're hopefully going to run to the finish with all of them. There goes Pruitt getting out of the way, so there's some of that AI logic, which I quite like. I think it's doing enough right now that it's not going to be at the top of my list of things to improve, but the car is able to get out of the way, at least in some way, and they're not super erratic with it either. Overall, the AI is very well behaved. I've had a couple crashes and things happen, mostly on the start. In some of my testing, very bad corner there. Mostly on the starts, coming down to turn 1, there'll be a few cars crashing. I have been following cars before, and they'll just kind of go too hard into a corner and spin out, which is neat to see, mistakes on their own. But it's only nice to have mistakes with AI if they can race consistently the rest of the time. I know I've always, especially in the ISI sims, always took the AI parameters and tried to make them crash as little as possible, because there's always weird things that are going to happen that'll cause enough mayhem in the races. I think Greg Moore up front, side by side with another car. Be a lapped car. Looks like one of the Penske's, actually. Which is not too unrealistic for 1998. Greg Moore actually won this race in 1998. Looks like he's back in 3rd today, though. That's something I haven't had to play with at all, or probably just because I'm not concentrating quite as hard as I normally would, but you can adjust the roll bars and the engine map from in the car, and I've got the roll bars at least mapped up to some controls on my wheel. And it'd be nice if, once the setups really get dialed in and you're really on a nice edge, especially at the high-speed ovals, having those tools will be awesome. So it's great that they're already in the cars. Haven't quite played around enough to notice how big of a difference they make, but they should definitely make a big difference. Playing with your tools, as it was called, is a huge part of racing ovals in these, and staying ahead of the car, being able to adjust the roll bars to keep the car not only performing well, but simply from spinning out as the fuel decreases, as the tires wear. That's what keeps it interesting around a high-speed oval too. It may look like just a bunch of corners, left-handed corners, racing side by side with somebody might be interesting, but when you're on that long run, 300 miles into a 500-mile race, and you've got to play with the weight jacker, the roll bars, to make sure the car's not going to spin out on the next corner, that you can still take it almost flat out. Keeps it interesting. It's a very minute detail to some. If you want AI racing or oval racing in general to work out, it definitely needs to be in. Of the straightaway. I'm slowly catching these two. I don't know if I'm going to have enough laps to do it, though. So I'm lap 31 already. Greg Moore's gotten around. I think it's a lapped car. Must be. Sticking with him, though, with the slipstream. Might be Vitolo, one of the unpainted cars in the set. The car set, the CART liveries coming along so nicely, and it's great to see just how quickly it's come about. This pack's only been out a couple weeks at this point. We've got all the important cars, I would say, painted so far, and it'd be nice to get the rest of the field filled in. A minor, very minor thing, maybe bottom of the list right now, is going to be the ability to add more AI in general. Can have up to 32 cars on some of the tracks, or 32 AI, so it seems like they've built in the capability, maybe hint towards Indianapolis being, a track that comes out for this. Take the AI down low. There we go. So you can have 33 cars on some of the tracks, and so maybe Indy's in the pipeline for someday. But the car set for this, the 1998 CART cars, only have, I think, 25 or 26 cars included. And there's no ability to add additional paint schemes. So if you do increase your AI limit to 32, you'll get some duplicates in there. So that's another thing, bottom of the list. But being able to maybe customize the different cars a bit more, and I would love to see helmets and suit liveries and everything be a part of it. This is all the minor stuff. The big stuff, I think we've talked about already. Very optimistic with this. I hope so far it's been convincing, these 34 laps, that I don't think it's super far off from doing oval racing. And, you know, compared to what we've seen in some other sims as of late, or so-called sims for oval racing, you know, they aren't stopping on the track in weird spots, and they're not running into each other and flipping over wildly. And this is almost there as far as the actual racing is concerned. And it's all the extra little stuff that, you know, some of it can probably be pretty easy, and some of it's undoubtedly difficult to code in. But hopefully a few of these features I'm talking about can make it and just make a decent oval experience, because it's been way too long that we've had a sim that can actually pull it off, especially in these amazing cars. I know iRacing's just come out with their AI for IndyCar, and it's the modern IR18, and it's something I still have to try out, and I'm convinced it's probably pretty good, but it's not these classic cars. To me, these are some of the best cars, not just Indy cars, but best cars of all time. So to have somewhere where we can experience them a little more closer to reality is appreciated. Got a nice run on Greg Moore now. Go up the inside. There's no team orders today. Come around him. Turn 3 is going to come back on me as we come out of the corner, I bet. Get the throttle nice and early. Car feels really hooked up now. Lap 37, just a few to go. We're quite a ways off Franchitti, maybe. He's right up there, actually. Maybe we can get Franchitti, too. Down to third gear for turn 1, a little bit wide. Another lapped car between me and Franchitti, but maybe we can use him as the slipstream to get up there. Been able to stick with me behind just because of the draft. Be interesting to see. I think in 2000 CART had the Hanford device, which was basically a big spoiler on the rear wing around the super speedways. So if they do implement the different body kits and chassis coming to the lapped car there, be interesting to see if they have those differences for the high-speed ovals. And I said in the first video that, you know, 95, 98, 2000, I don't think the car experience itself is going to be drastically different, but if the 2000 cars have the Hanford device, it will definitely be a lot different, and probably the most fun that you could have racing around a high-speed oval. Slingshot passes. Be great for online racing, I'd imagine. All right, we'll come to the line, just 2 to go. Franchitti's in front of me here. We're 2 seconds off of Vassar, who's in the lead. You can see him up there as well. He's going to be a little too far to get, but maybe I can get Franchitti. Really take the curb on the inside. You can see just how dangerous this track would be as I just kissed the wall there coming out of it. You see the track has changed quite a bit too. There's quite a lot of dirt back there on the inside of the track. I think the track surface stuff is going to be interesting for ovals. Down to third gear, pick up the throttle, coming to the front straightaway. We're gonna have 1 to go, a little bit closer. I don't know if it'll be quite enough though. Get the white flag, maybe, no. All right, nice and deep into turn 1 and 2. Pick up the throttle. Ran a little wide, but carried a lot of speed there. Should have a good slipstream on Franchitti now, but it might be just a little too little. Especially with how fast they are coming out of turn 3, closing up. Under braking, dive down to the inside, right to his rear wing. Not going to be able to get him. But we'll come to the line. Not a bad race overall. Got to the end. The AI did all right with the strategy. which is more than you can ask for in a lot of sims. I'm so excited for this. I think there's a short list of things that I've been compiling here, but only a couple of them in my eyes are really needed. Once we get those few things, the rest of it's just gravy. And so if Reiza can pull one out of the bag, add a few more features to this, I think we're going to be looking at a really fun time racing some AI, some long races. So I hope this video didn't come across as complaining. I'm very positive overall at what we've got here. I think we've got the start, the beginnings of something pretty awesome, and it's really minor stuff overall that's going to make it just absolutely perfect. But there are a couple things I think need to happen in order for it to be something that would be fun to continue playing. The number one thing that needs to happen in my eyes is AI pit strategy and just making sure they don't do anything that's going to take them out of being competitive at all. Of course, I'd love to have interesting strategies, and I hope they can get it there, but even something simple like just making sure the AI can make it on fuel and either split the race into halves or thirds or whatever it would be so that they pit in a logical sequence. I think that's necessary, but if they can do anything beyond that, it'd be great, and it would benefit all types of racing. I think I've seen this behavior in the road racing as well, where they don't exactly make the right decisions. So as it is today, if they don't do that, still not all lost. You just have to run, I guess, without tire or fuel wear on, which would be a massive disappointment for oval racing, because that's one of the things that keeps it very interesting, is conserving fuel, conserving tires, trying to make different strategies work. The second thing, somewhat intertwined, but I think the second most important thing is safety cars or caution periods with pace cars, full course cautions. This also would benefit all types of racing, and clearly the tracks right now we can do formation laps, so I think the logic is there that a car could pace behind something, or maybe they're preparing for it. I hope they are. So if they can have full course cautions, and those two things with the strategy, they go together somewhat, and you of course need the AI to understand when there's a caution, should I pit, should I not pit. I think it could increase the complexity quite a lot. So it's a tough problem to solve. Clearly, if it was easy, every sim would have it and it would be perfect, but those two things, if they can nail that in full course cautions, we can have AI strategy, and especially AI strategy that adapts to cautions. I think that's all we'd really need to be able to have fun with this. Now, there's a whole list of other things that I've talked about during this video, and having the AI a little more consistent around the track, that would certainly be nice, and maybe close to a must-have for me. But it's going to be hard to do around all the tracks, and I think that's something that they can continue to balance as folks get good at tracks, or we can see how the AI react overall. But just making them a little slower here coming out of turn 4, unless my setup's just completely wrong, that would be nice here. The rest of it with how the starting procedure works, and the cars maybe starting too late, or having the qualifying procedures, or even the stuff where the AI coming in and out of the pits are invisible. All that stuff in my eyes is kind of minor. Would be awesome to have different or fixed at some point, but really not needed for an initial release. It's not going to change the enjoyment of the sim too much. So we have 4 tracks from the 1998 CART season, with Rio here, as well as Long Beach, Laguna Seca, and Cleveland. With Road America on the way shortly, that's going to make 5, but it begs the question, what are the tracks that are going to be released with V3? If we're going by past DLC releases, I think we could expect maybe 3 different circuits, and I know at some point in the past they said Daytona was going to be an oval at some stage, and maybe that's what's coming. Maybe they're going to do stock car racing potentially. I think that could still be good even for this. If they do stock car racing, there's obviously going to have to be some attention to oval AI, and hopefully that all carries over, but I would love them just to sink their teeth into this CART stuff and focus entirely on it. I think the stock car market would be a hard one to break into, and this is virtually untapped, and hopefully the player base is there. But yeah, having it focused entirely on CART would be amazing. It's kind of my dream. So what 3 tracks could it be? If it's not going to be Daytona as one of the ovals, I hope we get 3 different types of ovals. I think you have to do 1 2-mile oval, whether it's Michigan or Fontana, or both maybe, but they're so similar, maybe it would be too hard to do both. But you have to do at least one of those. That's kind of the iconic track for these cars on the high-speed oval. So I hope one of those is coming. It'd be great to have a mile oval, kind of the traditional oval, Milwaukee or maybe New Hampshire, or maybe even a classic Homestead Miami. That could be really cool to have as well. And then I personally would be torn as whether or not I want Indianapolis, which for the 1995 cars, when we get them, would obviously be a great track to have, or would it be better to get more of like a Phoenix, Nazareth, tri-oval type oval? I could honestly be okay with either of those. If we do get one high-speed oval, at least a Fontana or a Michigan, I would be okay without Indianapolis, although I know many folks would be upset about that. And it would be fun to try to race the 98 or 2000 cars around Indy. So either way, if we get three ovals that are for CART Indy cars, I think I'd be a pretty happy person. So this has been the state of oval racing and my wish list for Automobilista 2. It's so close to being there that I wouldn't make a video like this if I thought there was no hope. I think there's a lot of hope for this for a fun offline sim, and online feels to me like there's enough features there already. Once they get the other chassis combinations in, then it's going to be easily fun there as well. I'd be interested in what other folks think are the necessary features for oval racing. I think if you are like me and like recreating events or racing in full races offline, then my list hopefully is kind of on track with what you'd think. But I'm sure there are others out there with other priorities that would rather see something completely different. So always interested in other opinions as well. But I'll definitely be back with this. I don't have to make multiple videos in quick succession on the same thing. But when I'm having this much fun with something and I care about it succeeding as much as I do this, I just can't help myself. So there'll be more soon. Hope you enjoyed watching. This has been GP Laps, and I'll see you all again next time.